Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD bodybuilder, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about soreness. Is it good for muscle growth? How sore should you aim to be? And can you still train when you're sore? A lot of old school bodybuilders will follow bro splits where they train each muscle group just once a week and go into the gym and annihilate that muscle group and have it be sore all week. Often they use techniques specifically designed to cause muscle damage and soreness, and the idea is that you damage the muscle and have it grow back stronger and bigger. That probably isn't the ideal approach. Soreness is a more nuanced topic that we'll delve into today. Alright, quick outline for today. We'll start off by talking about the role of soreness and hypertrophy in terms of mechanisms of muscle growth. Then we'll talk about the benefits of soreness, we'll talk about the disadvantages, and lastly, we'll put everything together to give you some recommendations on how sore you should train to. If you've been enjoying my content, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. Starting off with the role of soreness and muscle growth, let's talk about the mechanisms of hypertrophy. There are three main mechanisms that have been proposed in the literature. The first and most important contributor is mechanical tension. And this basically means that you're applying the right force in the right amount for the right length of time on your muscle. Next, we have metabolic stress. Metabolic stress is basically the byproduct of doing taxing exercise. The pump and the burn give you somewhat of an idea of metabolic stress. And lastly, we have muscle damage, which is pretty intuitive. Now, bringing soreness into the equation, you can mainly think of soreness as a marker of muscle damage. It's important to note here that soreness does not equal muscle damage, but it can give you an idea of how much damage you created. Now, I'll also point out that soreness can be an indirect marker of mechanical tension. When you apply enough of a stimulus to your muscle, it will be sore. And part of this is through the relationship between mechanical tension and muscle damage. Basically, if you develop enough tension across a muscle, you will also create damage. Using very metabolically stressful training can also give you soreness. But for this discussion, mainly think of soreness as a marker of muscle damage. And remember that mechanical tension is our main driver of hypertrophy, and metabolic stress and muscle damage play a much smaller role. Alright, now let's talk about the benefits of soreness for muscle growth. First of all, if you're sore in the target muscle, it tells you that you trained the right muscle. For a lot of bodybuilders, especially beginners, they might have trouble actually targeting the intended muscle group. Often they're not doing things properly in terms of technique, mind-muscle connection, or exercise selection. If you're not using good form and you're cheating a lot with the weight, or you're not engaging the right muscles, then you won't be sore and you won't be getting a good hypertrophy stimulus either. If you find that you don't have a good mind-muscle connection with your muscles, you may not be engaging them properly either. And lastly, people have different responses to different exercises. For example, for some people, a barbell bench press might be great for their pecs, but for others it might just not be. Next, soreness gives you an idea of the amount of stimulus that you're applying to the given muscle. This assumes you have things right in terms of progressive overload, your intensity or how much weight you're using, your rep ranges, and how close you go to failure. But if you have those things set right, being more sore generally means that you've applied more stimulus. Lastly, soreness and muscle damage more in general may contribute to muscle growth directly. But remember that this probably isn't that big a player here. Alright, now that we've talked about the benefits of soreness, let's talk about the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that being really sore can interfere with your workout performance on your next workout and throughout the week. If you're really sore, you might have trouble engaging the same muscle properly, and soreness is also related to fatigue. And if you're just fatigued overall, you won't have as good performance, which means you might not lift as much in terms of sets, reps, or weight, and you'll do less overall volume. And volume is a very important driver of hypertrophy. This usually applies for training the same muscle group while it's still sore, but different muscle groups can also interfere with each other. For example, if you have very sore triceps, this can interfere with your chest workout because a lot of chest exercises like pushing exercises use your triceps. Now the next disadvantage of soreness is that it doesn't directly correlate to hypertrophy. A lot of people chase soreness and they'll use very extreme intensity techniques specifically to make the muscle sore. A lot of these techniques don't actually pay off in terms of the amount of productive volume that you get out of it. The main problem is that you're generating a lot of fatigue and there's only so much your body can recover from. Remember that there's an inverted U-shaped relationship between volume and hypertrophy. You want to do enough volume to get that peak of hypertrophy response. And if you do too much, your results might not be as good. The last disadvantage of soreness is that overlapping soreness might signal a risk of injury or that you're training too hard. If you're always sore in the same muscle group and that soreness never goes away in between workouts, you might be at risk of chronic injury. A lot of your connective tissues, like in your joints or tendons, will heal more slowly than your actual muscles. And even though you might still be performing pretty well in the gym, you might be at risk of injury. The other thing is, if your program's set up that you're always sore and the soreness never goes away, you might be training too hard. Alright, now let's put everything together to give you some recommendations on soreness. First off, some soreness is good for muscle growth. As we said, there may be some direct hypertrophy benefit of soreness and muscle damage in general. However, the main utility of soreness is that you can use it as a marker of productive training. If you're sore in the intended muscle group, you know that you've been able to target it properly. I talk more about this in my Basics of Training series, so you can check out that playlist. But briefly, you want to make sure that you're applying progressive overload, that you're aiming for about 1 to 2 reps shy of failure, and that you're doing about 2/3 of your volume in the 6 to 12 rep range. Once you have those variables figured out, if you're more sore, it probably means that you've applied more stimulus. If you find that you're not getting sore, you can tweak those variables, you can increase your volume, or you can troubleshoot those other things that I mentioned, like your technique, your mind-muscle connection, and your exercise selection. Alright, so how much soreness should you actually aim for? I'd recommend aiming for at least 1 day of soreness after your workout. In terms of your upper limit, I would aim to train again when your soreness is gone. So for example, if you train your chest twice per week on Monday and Friday, those workouts are 4 days apart. So you should aim to be sore somewhere between 1 to 3 days after your training session on Monday, which means you should be sore at least on Tuesday and up until possibly Thursday. I want to emphasize that you want to be aiming for these guidelines throughout your training program and throughout your training cycle. For a lot of people, in their first week of training, they jump right into the full program and they're immensely sore. And this basically negates the productivity of those first 1 or 2 weeks. So you should aim for your first 1 to 2 weeks in your training block or your training cycle to be slightly lighter in terms of the volume and or proximity to failure. And you'll want to manipulate your training variables to land somewhere in this range. Lastly, is it okay to train if you're sore? Yes. Overlapping soreness is okay, but you should program to avoid it. This is mainly because you want to avoid the risk of chronic injury and you want to make sure that you're not training too hard. If you're constantly sore, your body might not be recovering well and you won't be getting optimal hypertrophy. So it might be a sign that you need to deload or take an easy week from training, or you might need to adjust your programming to lighten it up a little bit. That's all for now, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like the video and leave me a comment below. I'm really good about answering every single one of my comments, so you'll definitely hear back from me. In particular, how many days of soreness do you aim for? Let me know. If you're looking for a science-based hypertrophy program, check out my push-pull legs upper-lower split, where I walk you through a full program template that's optimized for hypertrophy. If you've been getting value from my content, make sure you subscribe and share the channel with your fitness friends so they can benefit from it too. See you next time.